You're listening to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast, where we discuss whatever the fuck we want to. And yes, we can put sex and drugs and Jesus all in the same bed and still be all right at the end of the day. My name is Devanin, and I'll be interviewing guests from every corner of this world as we dig into topics that are too risque for the morning show, as we strive to help you understand what's really going on in your life. There is nothing off the table, and we've got a lot to talk about, so let's dive right into this episode. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. I'm so thankful to have you with me again this week. God bless each and every last one of you. Kim Sorrelle is my guest today. She is the author of 2 beautiful books, and she has an incredible story. This woman has become like a sister to me, and I am so excited to present her to the world. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the benefits of black licorice. She's going to tell us about how she became a widow. We're going to talk about the beauty of death and why doctors should not leave negative medical news on voicemails. Now, Kim has a special love in her heart for Haiti, and so we spend quite a bit of time talking about Haiti, and then we get into a little bit about VooDoo. Take a close listen to this episode, and I hope you get a lot out of it. Good morning, Miss Kim Sorrelle. Welcome to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast today. In the name of God, how are you doing, woman?
I am doing fabulous, and I am so grateful to be here. How are you?
I am fan-fucking-tastic, fan-fucking-tabulous, and scrumdiddlyumptious, if I do say so myself. So I'm so happy to have you with me today. I do believe that you're going to bring a shitload of value to my beautiful audience out there. Kim likes to keep it real, everybody. And so here we go. She's an author. She's an entrepreneur. She's a speaker. She's a cancer survivor. And she's a lover of black licorice. I'm going to give you a moment to talk about like your own history in your own way in just a second. But I wanted to dig into this lover of black licorice because never before would I've read into somebody's headlines and their profile and things like that they mention any sort of candy or derivative of a root or plant, which is what licorice is. So I want you to tell me what is so special, what's so damn special about this black licorice that it was worthy to go into your heading?
That is a good question. Well, I feel like more people don't like black licorice than do like black licorice, and I can't imagine my life without it. It's just one of those things. I grew up, my favorite aunt, my Aunt Rita, my great aunt, always had black licorice in her pantry. And she ran a home for old folks, and I loved going there and helping her out. And at the end of the day, having a piece of black licorice is a treat. And that's where my love started for black licorice, and it continues on, apparently.
Did you know, my dear, that there are health benefits to black licorice?
Tell me.
So when I came across this on your profile, it stood out to me, and so then I went digging around and shit as I do, and so what I found, and I'm gonna put this link to WebMD in the show notes so people can go and look it up. But it says it can help it can help digestion. Black licorice can help your digestive system work more effectively. It can ease symptoms from indigestion, heartburn, and ulcers. Black licorice extracts have been linked to a reduction in the bacteria that cause ulcers. And I could have sworn I read something about this can have some sort of like maybe cancer fighting qualities too. And so considering your history with cancer, which I'm going to let you tell us about, I was wondering if maybe the Lord wasn't watching out for you early on in life before you got your diagnosis, because sometimes we have a taste for things that are going to heal us and we don't necessarily realize it at the time. We just know we keep craving that for some reason. And so I'm wondering if perhaps you were drawn to that in order to help you overcome what you would be fighting later on in life.
Interesting. Yeah, I love the idea of that, I have to say, because that's true. Like you hear about women that are expecting babies and crave certain things because there's iron in it or there's something in it that they need or the baby needs or people in general. So yeah, could possibly be for sure.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna read this real quick, and I'll hush. And I was just so fascinated by this because I'm a licensed massage therapist, and I like to get into natural healing and stuff like that. And I have a shitload of essential oils and everything like that. And so, anything natural root that we can do for ourselves, that sometimes the remedies that we need are like right there on the shelf in the house, and we don't know. you know,
Yep, right, right. So
you,
true.
then we go running to doctors and get pumped full of all these drugs. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not. So I'm just going to read this here. So it says a substance extracted from licorice root, licocolcone-A, has been shown to have anti-tumor activity in acute leukemia, breast, and prostate cancer cell lines by lowering the amount of BCL2, whatever the fuck that is. Oh, a drug-resistant protein. Excessive amounts of this protein are frequently associated with these cancers. So licorice is actually a plant, and it's found in like a couple of different countries in the world. And then that's how they make that black licorice candy. But it's not all sugar. It's bitter. It's not like the sweetest thing on the shelf. So so yeah, I wanted you to know that, and everybody else. Let's get some licorice, y'all.
No kidding. There you go. You just heal a whole bunch of people.
So tell us about like whatever you want to say about your history, and then go ahead and segue into the cancer story.
Sure. Yeah. So I was going to be the first woman president. That was my plan. And so I had my life laid out before me and knew where I was going to go and what I was going to do. And then May of my senior year in high school, this man walked through the door and I fell head over heels in love with him after swearing I would never get married and have children because I had my life laid out. And 10 days after I met him, I asked him if he'd marry me. And he said yes. And then we got married a little bit less than a year later. And so I was 17 when I got engaged and 18 when I got married. He was 22 when we got married. And he was the love of my life. I mean, I felt like we dated for a whole bunch of years. A couple years later, the babies started coming. I've got 5 kids and 11 grandkids. And so big family. I know it's fun. It's so fun. And I love taking them to Disney World, the happiest place on earth. And they do sell black licorice at Disney World, so that's good too. So, yeah, and I started my first business right out of high school. I'm an entrepreneur. I've had businesses my whole life, and I run a nonprofit organization. I coached varsity volleyball for 25 years, and just whatever, been active and busy, and I've written a couple books.
You know what? That's not a bad life.
No, it's a great life.
It's not a bad life at all because you've taken risks. You understand failure. You tell me about tell me about at any point in your life where you failed at something, maybe it was a business or something that you tried to do and it didn't work out. Because I wanted to illustrate because clearly you didn't get discouraged and you kept trying. And business can be a bitch to get into, all the obstacles, the paperwork, the documentation. It's not really a clear path. And then so sometimes we fail and then we don't try again. So tell me about a time you tried to do something and it just didn't work out.
Yeah, well, there's more than one of those stories to tell. I'll tell you
Okay.
that. I tried different businesses over the years. I was in business in some businesses with my brother and my dad, and some businesses alone, and whatever. But we one business that didn't work out for me was fine dining. I have a golf course and banquet facilities, so we do events, but we had fine dining, and that's a tough road, man. Anybody in the restaurant business, I have so much respect for. I've been in the catering business for years. You know exactly how many people are coming, what time they're coming, and what they're eating. Restaurant business is a whole different game, even staffing and knowing what food to have on hand and everything else. And there's so much loss of food, and you can overstaff or you can understaff. There's such a science to it. And to have one standalone restaurant and survive is amazing miracle. Hats off to those people. A lot of times you need more than one to share expense and
Mm.
for income coming in. So yeah, that's somebody I have a whole lot of respect for, people in the restaurant business.
Yeah, I've been a server. I've worked in restaurants. I've worked for catering companies. Yeah, it's a bitch of an industry to be in, especially in the States because of the attitude that is here. You know, this may be the last country on the planet that actually still tip servers rather than just paying them and being fucking done with it. So, but I wanted to highlight that because, you know, with the pandemic and everything, people, you know, the world has like a sun has risen over us. And I'm thankful for the disruption of the coronavirus because it's shaken a lot of people up out of their bullshit ass lie of a lives that they had told themselves that they were. What I'm saying is that they were living a life that they really weren't happy with in the first place. They were lying to themselves and accepting that as reality. They weren't happy. So the coronavirus took them away from the delusion long enough to get a new perspective. And then so a lot of people didn't go back to the bullshit. However, just because they're on a new path doesn't mean it's gonna be all, you know, gravy and flowers and, you know, dick sucking and all of that. You know, there's gonna be some fuckery along the way. And so what words of encouragement would you say to people who are new to entrepreneurship, especially in this time that we live where so many people are trying new things? And it doesn't matter if it's, you know, starting your own Lyft or Uber business, you're still an entrepreneur, you know. What would you say?
I would say do not give up. Don't give up. Don't give up. You know, there have been so many stories, story after story of people who their first try failed, their second try failed, their third thing failed, you know, whatever. In the publishing world, there's one of the books that has sold more books than practically any other book in the world, maybe any other book in the world, is the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. If you've heard of it, Jack Canfield. And they had 144 rejections before they got a publisher to publish their book. 144. And they have sold 650 million books. 650 million books. That's
Damn.
yeah, no kidding. And so you look at that and go, well, what if they would have stopped at 142 and just given up, right? Harry Potter was rejected 11 times before a publisher said yes. What if J.K. Rowling's would have stopped at number 10 and just didn't put it out there anymore? Just don't give up. Don't believe in what you're doing. Work your butt off. Realize that entrepreneurship is the hardest road. You sometimes I think people look at it and go, oh gosh, you're your own boss. True. Oh gosh, you can set your own hours. Yes. But your own hours are more than anybody else that's going to work for you. And you have to do everything alone at first. You know, like it takes a long time to be in business before you take a vacation. So it's the hardest work you'll ever do, the most rewarding work you'll ever do. And really you name your own price. You know, however hard you decide to work, whatever you decide to put into it is what you're going to get out of it.
Correct. And I couldn't agree more from having my own business and everything like that. It's bittersweet in that aspect. Like you do call your own shots. So it depends on what your value system is. Like I value freedom. I love to come and go as I please, and I don't like being told what to do. Therefore, even though I got to go out there and hustle and make my own money every day, my mental health is in a better state because I would rather the pressure of having to make my own money than to have a dumbass boss telling me what to do and dumbass coworkers fucking up my vibe. So it
So
depends
the
on
military was great for you then.
the military just sucked my fucking dick. But yeah, I was 17 when I went to the military. I don't recommend that. Don't recommend it at all. Now,
Yeah.
since we mentioned Miss J.K. Rowling, I always like to say, "Fuck you, J.K. Rowling, for being a damn turf." You know, and turf is a trans exclusionary radical feminist because she has those strong views against fucking like you know people, women who transition. Because she's like, "I'm a real woman; those bitches are not." So
Oh, I
she's
didn't know that about her.
oh god, Google it. This bitch has been being
Wow.
dragged for filth by the gay community of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community for quite a while now because she has liked certain posts and said certain things, especially on her damn Twitter, I think. So we love her for giving us Harry Potter. We love her for giving us Gay Dumbledore. That was a cute little sneak attack that she, did that, or at least the fact that he was gay after, after all the books came out. So I appreciate the fuck out of her for that. But so she's not like against gay people, but I don't like how she's against the trans girls too. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, that's too bad. Yeah.
it is too bad, but so she's bittersweet, and that's just where I stand on that. So, so let's talk about the cancer. So in my research, and it wasn't just you who had cancer. You had breast cancer. You said your husband had pancreatic cancer. Now, it's not very often I talk to a person where two people in their household had cancer at the same time. So walk me through the emotion. I want to know where you were when you found out he had cancer, when you had cancer, where you were physically and where you were mentally.
Yeah, well, hopefully this will be valuable to people. I was 47 years old when I found out I had cancer. I fought getting a mammogram because I thought, oh, it's just the medical system making money. There's no breast cancer in my history that I would know if I had cancer. Like I fought getting mammograms. And so I did not get them every year like you're supposed to. They're painful, they're horrible. It was obviously a man who invented the machine that turns your breast into a pancake. It is not a comfortable thing to have to do. And so I didn't want to do it. So I had, but like every few years, and you're supposed to go more often than I was going. So my doctor convinced me to go, and I went. I actually went to the doctor because I had tennis elbow, and she said, you've not had a mammogram for a while. You really need to go. And so I went kicking and screaming, and I said to the poor sweet ladies that were working at the Betty Ford clinic, I said, I am not happy to be here. Like, this is ridiculous. This is a waste of my time. I'm a busy person. I shouldn't even have to be here doing this. And they were very sweet and very nice and did the mammogram, and then they make you wait. And then they wanted to do an ultrasound, and they did that. And then they scheduled me for a biopsy. And I was like, this is such a waste of time. There is no way there's anything wrong. And then on a Friday afternoon, 2 days after my birthday, actually, I went and had a couple of my grandbabies in the bathtub, and my phone rang at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And they said, Kim, the biopsy's back and you have breast cancer. And that's pretty much all I heard. It was like, blah, 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 blah. We'll call you on Tuesday. I was like, what? And they're calling me on a Friday afternoon, and I watch Lifetime movies. I like a good Lifetime movie. And that never happens that way. You get called into the office, they tell you face to face, you can ask questions, it's a big dramatic moment, right? No, they called me on the phone on a flippin' Friday afternoon when I can ask no questions. It was frustrating to me. And so anyway, I just didn't even know how to react. I started crying. I called my husband on the phone. He was at work, and I could barely get the words out. And it seemed like seconds later he was there, and he did the right thing. All of you who have a significant other out there, this is what you should do. He just grabbed me and held me. He just held me, and we cried together because we didn't know what the future held. And that cancer word is a scary, scary word. And so the next day I went to the bookstore, and all the books about breast cancer were either very depressing or just medical. And I thought, I want to know what it's going to feel like. I want to know what it's like, and then I knew better than to go tracing things on the internet because you see things you don't ever want to see. And so I started writing. Actually, it was incredible therapy for me, but I started out just as a way to inform friends and family instead of calling everybody, "Hey, I'm going to the doctor tomorrow," whatever. But my writing turned into way more than just, "I'm going to the doctor tomorrow." It was what I was going through. And there are so many choices you have to make. Like, one of the choices is I had the choice. I had to have a mastectomy, but to take off one side or both. And I didn't know. I mean, how do you know what to do? I've never been through this before. I didn't know what the right answer was. And we were sitting around the table, dinner table one night and talking about it. And I said, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I got to make a decision. If one of my sons said, Mom, would you get new siding on just half the house? And I went, oh, good point, son. You're right. Yeah, we'll go for two here. So anyway, I was writing, continued to write. My husband started having stomach issues. And so it was early September that I was diagnosed, that I got the phone call. And then the end of September, his stomach was hurting. He went to the doctor and they said, take some Rolaids. It's because your wife has cancer, whatever. You're just nervous. And then November, he went back again because it wasn't getting any better. And they told him the same thing, gave him an appointment for a gastro guy. And the day that his appointment was, not until January, it took forever to get into somebody. But the next day, I was having a complete hysterectomy and a colonoscopy. So I was doing a clean out the day that he went in. So I wasn't going any farther than 5 feet from my bathroom. And so he went by himself and I was the mouth. So I would have asked 100 questions. He just went and didn't really ask questions and they did nothing. They basically told him the same thing. It's just, you're just nervous, take some Rolaids, take some Tums, whatever. And I was so mad, but I couldn't really do anything about it when he came home and told me, whatever. And then the next day I had surgery. And so a week out of surgery, and they found bladder cancer too during my surgery, whatever. But anyways, so I was still healing. And I woke up in the morning and he was sitting up in bed and did not look good. And he said, God, my stomach, it kept me up. I just couldn't sleep. And I said, that's it. Go to the ER because they'll do something. At least they'll do something. The doctors are doing nothing. At least they'll run a test. They'll do something. So he drove himself to the emergency room. And my husband was a rule follower. So it said no cell phones in the emergency room. So his cell phone was off. So I'm waiting and waiting and waiting for him to call me. And as I'm still in, pajamas watching reruns of Grey's Anatomy or something. And so he called and he said, well, I guess they're going to keep me overnight. And I'm like, keep you overnight? They don't keep anybody overnight. Like, what are you talking about? Keep you overnight? And so I threw on like human clothing and ran out the door. And in my Vicodin induced state, drove like a bat out of hell down the highway to get to the hospital to find out what was going on. And shortly before I got there, my phone rang again. And he said, I guess there's a spot on my liver. I just started bawling. I could barely see to drive. And I don't even remember parking. I just remember running in, holding body parts because I had surgery after surgery and I was in pain, but I went running through the door and they told me where he was and he was behind a curtain and I whipped back the curtain and he's just sitting on the edge of the bed like nothing is going on as I am bawling. I'm sobbing. And he said, I'm not going to invite you places anymore if this is the way you're going to behave. And I said, wait a minute. You are not allowed to be funny right now. So it took us a couple days. He spent a few more days in the hospital and they did some biopsies and a colonoscopy. They did whatever. And so it took a few days for us to get a diagnosis. And I was fighting the doctors every step of the way. They came in and said that his blood work, that they never saw levels like that. There's some cancer markers that they can tell in your blood. And the doctor came in and said he never saw numbers like that, never that high, never that high. And I'm like, well, then the lab screwed up. Rerun it. When he said, no mistake with the lab. I said, really? Your lab never makes a mistake? They must have made a mistake. They had to have. If you've never seen numbers like this. And he's like, no, whatever. Anyway, I fought it, but not that my fighting did any good, of course. But so then when we got his diagnosis, I was actually back in the hospital again because I was doing too much, I think, out of surgery and ended up with a bad kidney infection. And so he's being released as I'm being admitted. And it was just a mess. But then we got his diagnosis and of pancreatic cancer. And that is just the worst kind. I mean, with breast cancer has come a long way. There's different kinds of breast cancer, but it sure has come a long way, but pancreatic cancer just hasn't. Like there just isn't a cure. And so we knew what that meant. And so we just started praying, man, some miracle, give us a miracle, like the lame and the blind and the deaf got, back in Jesus' days, and or the greatest miracle of heaven, but don't let them suffer. It was our prayer. And we had a great time together, actually. Funny as that may sound, we watched Cash Cab every day and we just enjoyed being together and spent the whole time together thinking that he had a year. They were saying probably a year. And 6 weeks, 6 weeks later, all the whole 6 weeks were really pretty good. He wasn't in pain and our prayer was being answered. And then, but the last couple hours of his life, he was miserable. And he, I called hospice to come and help with more meds or, whatever to get him comfortable again. And I was holding him. He was sitting on the edge of the bed because it hurt to lay down. I was just holding him from behind and I just felt his pain, just the agony, the absolute agony that he was in at that time. And I just whispered in his ear, I said, baby, just go. And he did. That was it. He took his last breath and that was it. And it was crushing um because I was still in love with him. And after all those years, we were married a month shy of 29 years. I was 47 years old. And I expected to be that couple rocking on the porch, drinking lemonade, too old to do anything else. And we were going to grow old together. And so it was quite a shock to lose him because it wasn't just losing him, it was losing the dream of our future. We had just become empty nesters and we're so looking forward to that. And I don't know why, if you get to run around naked, or I don't know what it is about that, but we were so looking forward to that. And finally it happened for us. And I believe in an afterlife. I believe in heaven. And my husband was an amazing guy who was faithful and true and a great friend to people, an incredible boss. People had great respect for him. He was generous and kind. And so I've never begrudged him. I've never been angry at him for dying. Like I'm happy for him. Like at 51 years old to never pay a bill again, or have to worry about illness or anything. Go him. Like he did it. He ran the race and finished strong. And I miss him like crazy. If he walks through the door right now, I'd be the happiest person on earth, but I know it's not going to happen. And so I still had to deal with my stuff. I had to deal with my cancer still, and I had to deal with life now without the love of my life. And I wasn't sure what life was going to bring. But I was sure of one thing. I was not going to stay in the grief. I wasn't going to let that bring me down. I've known people that stay there. You know what I mean? Do you know people like that, that they lose somebody and they just kind of can't overcome it? They don't see a way out of it. And I was determined that I know there were things that happened that I wouldn't choose. I wouldn't choose to have cancer. I wouldn't choose to lose my husband. I wouldn't choose for him to have cancer. But the choices that I can make are how I'm going to live now. And I can choose to be joyful. and I can choose to embrace life and enjoy it, and I can choose to be happy. And so those are the choices I decided I would make.
Well, to answer your question, yes, I do know people who tend to get stuck in grief, particularly over the death of people. Well, it's perspective in our value system. Well, one thing you have in your favor is that you have an understanding of the life to come and the world to come. You see, when people die, they don't actually cease to exist. And we get people coming back to visit us in dreams and all sorts of stuff who have passed on. And this is evidence of what I'm telling you. Our more permanent form is our spirit form anyway. So when we die, we really become our truest selves at that point. We here on the earth are actually not yet at our highest state of evolution. So when people, and I'm seeing people cry and fall all over the casket at funerals and everything, it's all very dramatic. What I feel like people really cry for at death is the fact of whatever this person brought to their lives. Their people are crying over what that person can't do for them anymore, whether it's not bring them, whether bringing them some sort of comfort or whatever. Oh my God, this person's gone. How am I going to move on? Well, see, that's really all about you. you know, from their from the dead person's perspective, they're like, peace out. Hell yeah. I get the rest now. So I don't cry for the dead anymore because I was at the hospital when my pastor died, and she was like a mother to me, and that's what changed my perspective on it because she was like, "Yep," she was 80 years old. She's like, "I'm about to get my wings. I'm not leaving this hospital, but y'all are." Then it was just me, her husband would sleep on the couch, and I had served them as like their altar boy and assistant throughout high school, and so I went to the hospital that night. I wasn't expecting her to die. I was like, okay, she'll get a miracle, really powerful prophetess, religious woman and everything like that. I'm like, very clairvoyant and everything. Oh, she can't die, you know. So she just had me like call like one of her daughters and, her daughter that lived in Texas. And then everything just kind of like went from there. And then she did die. And I'm like, I heard that last like some call it like a death howl, that last like gasp life, depart from her. But she was so happy. She wasn't regretting anything. She's like, I'm not in any pain. I feel totally great. Life's been great. Bye. And so she had like the best attitude ever. So, and then I cried because, I was just been with someone since they died. This is the first. And so, but now I was like, what? She was really happy about this whole death thing. So, what the fuck am I crying for?
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, we do. We mourn for ourselves, right?
Right.
Like, we're not crying for them. I mean, they got it made. We're the ones. In fact, during that 6 weeks with my husband, there were times I would just start crying because I just couldn't help it. And, try to be all tough for him, whatever. And I just start crying and he just would grab me and hold me and he'd say, "Don't cry for me. Don't cry for me. Cry for you, but don't cry for me."
He
So,
told you right. He had a good mind. He's
mm,
not like a very wise sage. And look, I get that kids are gonna die and stuff like that, and it really rips my heart apart when marriages end because of the death of a child. I've never been in that situation. Only once in my life have I heard it said where a couple lost a kid and they were like, "You know what? We're thankful for the time God gave us with that kid." Maybe the kid was 17, but and then they moved on. Not saying it was just that easy. I don't know if they went to counseling or whatever, but it's about perspective. Even in the death of like a kid, that kid belongs to God first before it does to the before that individual does to the parents. And so, you know, we can have a plan for our child, but God might have other plans. And so we got to be willing to let those plans go, you know, shit something in. Sometimes we're just too married to how we think someone else's life is supposed to go, supposed to end, or even our own, but therein lies the differences between somebody who has surrendered to God and who is not, So much
right.
much easier to deal with the bad things in life if you understand that all doesn't have to go in whatever sort of way that you've already processed it in your head like it's gonna be. And so you mentioned that they left your cancer diagnosis on a voicemail. So they left my doctors left my HIV diagnosis on a voicemail. It was a Saturday night, New Year's Eve. And much the same way, like, man, really on a Saturday night, New Year's Eve, you couldn't have fucking waited till like Monday on like on the second, you know?
No kidding. Oh my word.
So I
Wow.
would say to doctors and medical professionals out there, just because we may or may not sign some shit that says you can leave voicemails, we mean we still need you to exercise some modicum of discretion about what you choose to. It doesn't mean you just fling everything on there. We like to hear good shit, good test results, appointment reminders. If it's a life altering diagnosis, even though we may have given you permission, just because you can doesn't mean you should. We would
For
very much like you to bring us into the office and tell us if we have HIV, cancer, or something else. Do not leave it on a voicemail and not on a Friday or Saturday night where we're trying to enjoy our damn wine.
no kidding. Happy New Year. Happy flipping New Year. Oh my word, that's terrible. You know what? I think too, like with the medical profession, like they have to deliver news like that so often that maybe they just become a little,
Callous.
yeah, a little callous, right? Good word. And so they're not necessarily paying attention to the calendar or time of day or, how they're doing it. But man, if it's something that 2 days or 3 days isn't going to make a difference in your life, health wise, wait the 2 or 3 days for goodness sake. Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy.
It matters how we deliver bad news to people. And I didn't learn this or know it until I got that voicemail. Um, Y it just does, like the setting, the atmosphere. I never talked to a psychologist. Smart doctors bring a person in, even in the case of cancer, I would imagine you wanna have the mental health staff. You wanna have everybody right there in the room so that that person doesn't run out and go do something to hurt themselves, something like that, because you never know what how a person might react. And by leaving a voicemail, you rob the patient of the luxuries, not even the luxuries of the bare minimum necessities of having all the care there, or at least at the appointments before they leave. I never talked to a doctor about it again, really. I never went to a mental health. I decided that I was going to die. And so then I became homeless and then I started getting arrested and everything. And so I had the wrong perception of what HIV was, but I wasn't in a doctor's office to get any education. And they told me the word infectious disease. And I was like, fuck, I don't want to go talk to those people. It sounds disgusting. Ew, what the fuck?
Right.
So I was freaked out by the name of everything. And I just ran. I ran from it.
I I can't say as I blame you. I mean, you know, HIV, certainly things have changed a lot over the years, right? As far as medications, treatments, and whatever. But there was a time not that long ago that that was a death sentence. And I would think that's the first thing that's going to come to your mind is, oh my gosh, HIV, I'm going to die. Is that what you thought? Like, is that what you were thinking?
It did because at that time in Houston, while I was living in Houston, Texas, I would walk into like a gay bar and be like, "Hey, where's Timmy or whatever?" And they'd be like, "Oh, he died. He had AIDS." Or another fellow drug dealer of mine died from AIDS. Someone when I was growing up, when I was younger, died from AIDS. Everyone I knew had died from AIDS, and so it doesn't matter how far the medication has come and the science has come, and how well something can be treated. If somebody doesn't know that, that is just like, well, they don't know that. and so, and so if you and I didn't know that. And I didn't know anyone living a healthy life that I was, good friends with. I might have talked to it, may met a guy on a hookup app that may have had HIV, but having sex with somebody and being okay that they're HIV positive is not really, didn't really give me insight into exactly how they were living it. And I pushed that out of my mind because I just wanted dick. And so I didn't look at that as an opportunity to explore how one could live healthily with the virus because I was just horny and trying to fuck, so I let an opportunity pass me by, but, I have a different perspective about things now. I wanted you mentioned the mammogram was like turning like the breast into pancakes and that it's a painful experience that, a woman isn't probably going to look forward to. What what can you tell me about this machine and what it what it does, because I'm trying to imagine this sort of torture device the way you seem to describe it.
It's exactly what it is. You like, you put your arm up and try to get as close into the machine as you possibly can, and then it literally squishes you from the top and bottom. They, like, turn a knob or something, and it goes farther and farther and farther, and it squishes you in there. It is painful, and I don't know if it's better if you're big breasted or small breasted. I don't know what the difference would be. I've always been well endowed, and so I had a lot to squish, and it hurts. I mean, I other women maybe were fortunate enough to have different experiences than I did, but any mammogram I ever had hurt like crazy. Like, that was one of the blessings of, having a double mastectomy, is I would never have to have another mammogram, and I'm okay with that. But because there's gotta be some silver lining, right?
Right?
But yeah, it just goes squishes you, and yeah, it hurts.
God damn. I wish how you were telling me, like, with the blood work that they can detect, there's cancer markers, but I wish that y'all could just get blood work done instead, but clearly that's not the case. Otherwise, they wouldn't be making you go through the mammogram. So, gosh, girls, I have the utmost respect for women, from having studied the period, the menstrual cycles during massage therapy, which I'm telling you, become a massage therapist, you have to learn so much about the anatomy, things that in the body you'll never touch. And so just learning about how y'all's bodies change when you're trying to bear a child and everything like that and everything that's going on, you know, in the different organs and the different anatomical structure of a female. Yeah, I have so much respect for women. Y'all are strong, mentally and physically and everything like that. And in my opinion, quite unbreakable.
I love that. I agree. I think women, we have to be strong, and I think we need to support each other more than what we do sometimes. Like, there should be a sisterhood, like, we should be supportive of each other, and aren't always, sometimes we can be the worst enemies, and it shouldn't be like that. Like, there should be this strong bond between us, because we do have to put up with a lot. So then what happens is we put up with it since from the time we're 10, 11, 12 years old, right? We have to deal with periods and cramps and pain, and then childbirth is no joyful moment. It's nice you get a baby at the end, but it's hard, and painful, and pregnancy can be tough and all of that. And so then later in life, when then you have to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom more often because of prostate issues, it's sort of payback in a way. It's like, oh, the one thing that the men have to deal with kind of, but yeah,
Well, boys, we better mind what energy we send out there because it's going to come back to us later on.
that's right.
So I pay women great respect. I identify more with women than I do men. Nothing against men. I mean, I like to go both ways in all the different ways that I can in the world, sexually speaking and, spiritually speaking and energetically speaking. Sometimes I feel like a man, sometimes I feel like a woman. I'm not confused. I just want it all. And
You know
so
what the beauty of that is, that I really believe that God created people to be who they are. And there are so many people out there that don't feel like they can live their authentic self, their real self, right? Because of things that they were taught growing up, or a lot of times church is doing so much damage to people, saying, oh gosh, you can't be like that. Like, my daughter, I don't know if I should be saying this on the radio, but it's okay. But my daughter married a man, and she got pregnant on her honeymoon. And when she was in the hospital delivering, he told her he was gay and wanted out of the marriage. But he grew up in this super strict Baptist home where you're not allowed to be gay, that's a sin. Well, no, God creates you how God creates you. You be who you are. Like, there's beauty in that. There's beauty in the diversity, right? People should just be allowed to be who they are without judgment or condemnation. Just be who God created you to be.
fuck. When I was in California, I went through this phase where I was trying to pray the gay away, and there's a documentary, and I've been keeping this in my show notes for shit since it came out. So it's been a running thing that I've had in my show notes for quite some time. It's called Pray Away. It's a documentary on Netflix about the old Exodus conversion therapy movement. The people who used to run that, who supposedly got converted and were ungay and told everybody else to change their ways, which resulted in suicides and death. Well, now they're still gay and they've come back to spill all the tea about the Exodus movement and how bullshit conversion therapy really is. And so I do recommend that fucking documentary to everybody. It is some tea being spilled, pour your wine, get your favorite beverage out, roll you up a blunt, whatever it is that you do, because that shit is gonna piss you off, but it's real. But I went through that too. I got me a girlfriend. I hung out with straight guys. I tried to fast and pray and ask Jesus to make me ungay, and it didn't work. And I dated this girl for 6 months, and ultimately I ended up just breaking her heart because the shit wasn't real. And so where did I ever learn that something was wrong with me? From the church? God never told me that. And look, y'all, not every preacher is preaching the truth. So we've got to get past this believing this because somebody's on a pulpit or on television or in a suit up on a platform like they know better than you do. They don't
Right,
necessarily.
exactly. Yeah, that and God is not the church. It's churches that hurt people. God's not hurting people, right? And so sometimes people get angry about what they've been taught in church, and then they realize that they've been taught wrong, or the church that they went to could be so harsh, or whatever. And that's the church's fault. Unfortunately reflects on God in some people's eyes, but it's not God. God loves. God is love. That's what it says in John, that God is love, not that he loves, but that he is love. Like, and love doesn't do that. Love doesn't make people fit into some box because people are more comfortable with it. Love just lets you be who you are. Love just allows you to live your real self, and without judgment, without thinking that you're better than, or higher than, or no more, or whatever.
I agree with what you're saying, Kim. And it will take some time for people to accept that sort of truth and then internalize it. Because we believe what we are taught growing up until we come into independent thinking. That's why I appreciate the mindfulness movement that's happening right now, and the push for autonomous mental thought. When I got kicked out of Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas for not being straight, it caused a rift in between me and God. Now, I had been in church and, like I said, serving my pastor and all of that till I was in high school and went to the military. I always held a volunteer position in church. They kicked me out, and that stopped me from praying. So why did that happen? Because I had conflated the God in the church as to one and no. That I was not as mature as I thought I was, and I was not as spiritually strong as I thought I was. Because had that happened, I should have just said, okay, well, fuck this church, but not fuck the God. And I just said, fuck everything, you see. And so, but now I would never do that, because now I finally get, as I'm almost 40 years old, that there's a difference in between the physical church and God himself. And the two should never, church, as I say, church is nothing more than an accessory to your spiritual walk. Your most valuable time to be your alone time with God. So that when these pastors show up in their fucking scandals, and when they do dumb shit like kick us out for not being straight, and the straight people see see their friends getting abused by churches for not being straight, we can still keep our relationship with God. So Jerry Falwell Jr., did you see his latest bullshit? After all of his shit, he finally came out in an article and said that it was all a ruse. Him running the that fucking seminary that his dad created and trying to do all that. He said it's all a lie. He wasn't ever about all that. He wants to just, do him, and that is not who he is. He ain't about all this Jesus stuff. So he
Wow.
finally just fucking admitted it. Bitch, we knew that. Because you know what, he had to address the pool boy scandal. You got the pool boys running around. You got your pants unzipping while you taking selfies with a bitch that's not your fucking wife. We knew. So that whole message was to his brain fucked church followers and his evangelicals and everything like that. Like, boy, bye. We already knew.
Yeah, but knowing it, then somebody is saying or doing
Yeah.
things, right? Like, it can be hard when you're in the spotlight and, I think it can be easy for people to get wrapped up in ego. And I mean, how many people have we seen fall? And it can, the higher you build your pedestal, the longer the fall is down, and it's sad to see. It's sad to see for sure.
His pedestal is fake though. But what you said is what he said. He was like, it was so much pressure to live up to the expectation of his dad. But, you know, or he could have said, you know what, dad, fuck you. This is not who I am. I'm gonna go have my pants open on cruise ships and fuck pool boys, because that's what I want to do. Okay, that's what you want to do, Jerry. Then go have your three ways and bring whatever. We always have a choice. And so let's make sure our pedestal is built on truth and not on lies.
Right. Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So 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 we're getting close to the end of our hour here. We're definitely gonna have you back on because you wrote 2 books. One's called Love Is, and the other one's called Cry Until You Laugh. And we haven't had time to get into them. I had a feeling this would happen because you have so much substance going on with you. And sometimes I might have to have someone back on my show 2 or 3 or 4 times, whatever the case may be. And if that's the case, you know what? So be it then. But I want to talk about Haiti a little bit because, oh, God bless that nation. They've been through so much. And I really want to shine a spotlight on Haitian people. I really, really do. And it seemed like you have a strong heart for Haiti. And I love how then I was reading your book. You went there for the first time in the year 2000, and you were like talking about the poverty and the rank air and everything. And it's like you were fighting, falling in love with it. But nevertheless, here you are and you're still in love with it. Sometimes in life, I've had that experience where my first brush with something, I'm like, I feel indifferent for it or like I'm repelled by it. And really, at the end of the day, I was falling in love with it, and now it's like some of my favorite things. Things that I hated at first, I fucking love now more than anything else. And I read that in this story. So the Haiti's been through so much. And when they had that last earthquake, a relative in my family said some stupid fucking shit like this. He was like, okay, it's because of all that witchcraft they have down there. That's why this punishment has come upon them. In which I responded to his ignorance just a little bit. I was like, I probably said something like, if you're not going to pray about them or speak something positive, then shut the fuck up because you don't know what the fuck they're doing. He's never been to Haiti. He doesn't have, he's drawn all these conclusions from a distance, yet will speak about it as if it's fact. And
Right.
so that shit pisses me off. And so you've lived among the people. And so you have every right to have written the things that you have written. So I want you to speak to me about your joy and your love for Haiti, and then I want to talk about the voodoo before we wrap up, and then we're going to talk about the book in depth the next time I have you back on, and we really talk about Haiti a lot.
Yeah, I do. I love Haiti. People are people all over the world, and we tend to put labels on people, right? Republican, Democrat, vaxxer, anti-vaxxer, Haitian, American, whatever. We put labels on people, but people aren't their labels. You know, a person is not a label. We all have our names. We're all individuals. We all have our names, and people are people all over the world. Haitian people, unfortunately, that are living in Haiti, it's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. The average Haitian eats 3 meals a week.
Uh,
Most do not have clean water. So they've got water that makes them sick. They had an earthquake in 2010 that killed over 200,000 people. And then the UN police that are there, that are supposed to be peacekeepers there, they end up putting their latrines way too close to the river, which is the source of water for people. They bathe in it, they wash their clothes in it like it's life to them. And because their latrines were too close, they introduced cholera into the country. cholera that hadn't been in the country for 100 years. Now cholera is back in Haiti, and lots of people, thousands of people have died because of cholera, because of the UN police. And it's it's kind of thing after thing after thing. And so Haiti is wonderful, wonderful, incredible, loving people that are living in really tough conditions is really what it comes down to. And I think there's a misconception, like in some people's minds, poverty and laziness go together. And poverty and laziness have nothing to do with each other. They shouldn't even be in the same sentence. What what people in Haiti lack is opportunity. There are no jobs. We've done so much damage to Haiti. The World Bank has done a lot of damage to Haiti. Other countries have done damage to Haiti because people make money on poverty. And so it's to people in this world's advantage financially to keep people down and keep them living in poverty, which is the biggest crime of all, probably, right? And so it's not a lack of intelligence. It's not a lack of work ethic. It's that keeps them in poverty. It is lack of opportunity. It is lack of opportunity. I don't know a lazy Haitian. I'm sure, like anything else, there's going to be lazy people, but I don't know any. And people that I know work hard and take opportunities to work when the opportunity is there. It's just not always there is the problem. And voodoo, I think, is so misunderstood. You know, we if we break a mirror, it's 7 years of bad luck, or a black cat crosses your path, or Friday the 13th, or don't walk under a ladder. Like, we have our own superstitions, right? And they're just sort of cultural superstitions within our country. And we have movies based on our cultural superstitions. Well, voodoo, there's cultural voodoo. It's not all just a religious voodoo, there's cultural voodoo. And so some of the beliefs, some of the, things like if you pick up a baby from behind, that baby is not going to grow tall, some things like that, that we'd go, what are they talking about? Well, they go, what are you talking about? You can't walk under a ladder, right? You can't open an umbrella inside. I mean, each culture probably has their own set of those kind of things, but people love Jesus and have voodoo in their life at the same time. And one does not have to exclude the other, because voodoo, I think people think of zombies, or they think of animal sacrifice or human sacrifice. Well, voodoo is so much more than that. There are so few doctors and so little healthcare in the entire country that there are voodoo doctors. And you don't just become one. Your dad was one, so you're one, your grandpa, your great grandpa. And it is herbal remedies and different ways to handle health issues. That's what a voodoo doctor does. It's not about curses and whatever. It's about, if they're in a community, there's no healthcare anywhere that you can walk to, that you can get to at all. So there's a doctor basically in the community. And there are some, I'm sure, very valuable things we could probably learn from them with natural remedies, like you were talking about black licorice earlier, right?
Mhm.
And that's voodoo. They're a voodoo doctor, but they're not skinning animals. I mean, there is some of that, certainly some extreme voodoo, like there's extreme anything else. But I would say, I mean, I don't know the statistic, but I know a whole lot of people in Haiti, and people that I know, they're culturally, there's voodoo, but they're not sacrificing anything. They're not, you know, some of the stuff you see in movies or read in books or whatever. That's not happening. They're just people living like we're living, and it's part of their culture.
Right. So, well, like you said, there's two sides to everything. You have the extreme sides of it and the bad side of it. When I have you on the next time, we're going to get more into the voodoo, and I'm going to talk about the experience that I had when I was in high school, where somebody practiced the negative side of voodoo on me.
Oh, I can't
And
wait to hear about it.
and because they're both true. You know, you have a and then, I have a couple of voodoo stories. I live here in Louisiana and voodoo is a big thing. Voodoo, hoodoo, whatever you want to call it, especially down in New Orleans. It's serious. We actually still have a place called Marie Laveau's house of voodoo, which I think is the house she used to live in. It's been turned into like a store in her honor. You can go there and buy candles and voodoo dolls and different sort of magic accessories to do your magic craft with and stuff like that. And I love American Horror Story season 3. It's about the witches in New Orleans, and there Angela Bassett plays Marie Laveau in in American Horror Story. Coven is what it's called, and it's just it's very entertaining. It's the kick ass way that they portrayed her. But you mentioned two things that I wanted to touch on, and then I will let you have our last word. You mentioned that poverty and laziness, you're not overly fond of those two things being coupled together. I wanted to give you a nod on that because the same dumbass relative who was talking shit about the Haitian people after they suffered the tragedy of a second earthquake in a relatively short amount of time. We were driving around one day and somebody was like homeless and he was all like, "Oh, I know they just go somewhere and like in a program, and like fix that or whatever." Okay. And I think at this point I had already been homeless before. And he said this stupid shit in my presence. And so I agree with you. It's not about laziness. It's about access, opportunity. And then I'm going to add to that and say state of mind. Having lived amongst the homeless people, not everybody wants to become unhomeless. Not everybody out there is unhappy. You have people living in mansions who go and fucking kill themselves, or other people in the house. There could be chaos, in the richest places, but somebody out there, shit. When I was in California, I'd see the homeless people sleeping sleeping under the palm trees in Santa Monica. I'm like, they look fine. Just because we see somebody in what we consider to be a degraded state doesn't mean that they consider themselves to be in a degraded state, or that they're unhappy, or that we need to go run trying to fix them, or that there's anything wrong with them being like that. And so, but it's not just because they're lazy or they don't want to work. Maybe they've had everything before. They don't want the pressures that come with having a successful life. Maybe they just fucking don't want anyone calling them. Just don't fucking want any appointments. They don't want any meetings. They just want to roam the street, get high, fuck, and just go to fucking sleep.
Well, it's so funny that you say that because I live not in a huge city, but it's the second biggest city in Michigan, Grand Rapids, and we have homeless, and I know a lot of them. I live right downtown. I know a lot of them by name, and I know people that are afraid of the homeless people. And it's like, when was the last time you ever knew of somebody getting attacked by a homeless person? Like, that's not probably to see in the newspapers. The people that I know, they're completely harmless. They Some people have addictions. Some people do have some mental illness. Some people have whatever issue they have, right? Like every day we've lived leads us to today. So whatever's happened in their life, this is where they are now. And I'd rather be under a palm tree in California than in cold, cold Michigan if I'm going to be living on the street. So I feel bad for them. And fortunately, our city does a pretty good job of making sure that there's hot food every day and places to go inside if it's really cold. But they're people. People are people. Just because they don't have a house doesn't make them less valuable or less of anything. They're people. They're people. We're all the same. We're all equal. So yeah, I don't know. I've never been afraid of the homeless in our city. I'd walk downtown alone at night and I don't care. I'm fine because nothing bad's gonna happen.
Right, because you send that out, that positive vibe out, you have that belief. That's why that comes to you. You see, a lot of times we create fear and obstacles where there shouldn't be obstacles. So people look at a homeless person just like they may look at a black person, go, "Oh my God, they're gonna rob me." They just will. Karen, go sit your ass down somewhere. It's it's not all about you, bitch. So, and I'll add to that. Once you have lost everything, Kim, the struggle to come back up is a motherfucker. It is not easy. You have to have pit bull tenacity, or is the word funny fun word you said in your book, the I think it was unflappability. A
Yeah.
possibility when you were struggling with the Haitian government with your nonprofit, which is something we're gonna get into great detail in the next episode. You had to, like, be really fucking determined to and you gotta build like a Lego set, one block at a time. You gotta get some sort of stabilized roof over your head, which may be shared housing. Then you gotta get some sort of meal plan worked out. Then you have to for me, I had to remember I had to start even lower than that. I had to remember how to brush my teeth every day. I had become like animal-like. I wasn't brushing my teeth. I couldn't remember the last time I clipped my nails or anything like that. I was like a beast out there. So I had to remember basic hygiene first. you know, then
Yeah.
we had to, get into, and I started doing that when I was in rehab because I was actually still long enough. So I had to get back to thinking like a human as opposed to somebody who's trying to survive and scavenge. And then I could grow up from there. And it took a long time and it wasn't a smooth process. So when you're asking somebody to stop being homeless, you're asking them to do something that you may yourself not have the strength to do. And then you're also asking them to abandon the community that they know and the lifestyle that they understand. So it's not just like that dumbass fucking relative of mine said, "Oh, why don't they just fix it?"
Well, it's kind of like when there was, when Katrina happened and people were saying, why do they live there? They should just all move. Well, they live there because their family's there and their neighbors are there and that's their home. Why would you tell everyone they have to move? I mean, it's kind of the same thing, right? It's like, you're going to let somebody tell you you got to move? Probably not. I don't know. It is crazy, but I never thought about that before. It's so interesting. The struggle that it is to get off the street. That's real.
It's a lot. Now, you also mentioned that you had saw like companies or the government or something profit off of the poverty of the Haitians. How does that happen?
Oh my gosh, in so many ways. There is a branch of our government that is the philanthropical branch, USAID, and there are so many stipulations. If you get USAID grant money to do a project anywhere in the world, there are all these strings attached, all these strings attached. So most of the time, I don't know of a time that this isn't true. You have to, like, if you're gonna start a farm in Haiti and you want money, you need to use US made equipment. You need to bring in US staff. You need to bring in US fertilizer. I don't know, whatever, but so much of everything has to be purchased in the US. And so it all kind of goes back to whoever has the strong lobbies and is pulling strings in Washington or, whatever with everything. And so instead of saying, hey, we're going to go into Haiti and we're going to start a farm and all the Haitians will work here and we're buying the equipment in country so that whoever owns the equipment gets money for it and whatever else. Instead, we're going to come in and do it because somehow we're smarter and better because we're American. And so it's not helping. It doesn't always lead to help, real help, the kind of help that the people in Haiti need. And so then if it's not helping anybody, it's not elevating anybody out of poverty. And I don't, and even like the sweatshops, right? Where people are making dollars a day, $5 a day for working 10 hours. And in a place where a gallon of milk is like $5, and a loaf of bread is way more expensive than you'd pay here. Like the cost of living there for food is a lot higher. And can you imagine $5 a day? How do you feed a family? How do you live on $5 a day? And work, backbreaking work, or, making t-shirts for Walmart so that you and I can go buy 10 t-shirts for $12 instead of paying $12 for 2 t-shirts. So then they have to keep labor low because we want more. We want to fill our closets more. I don't know about you, but I purge my closet fairly regularly and send clothes to Goodwill or Salvation Army, whatever. And because we want this excess, they don't pay higher wages. I mean, there's so much. There's uh so much I could tell you about it, but it's sad. And it really comes back to us not standing up and saying, "Hey, I don't really need 12 t-shirts. You know, I can do laundry, right? I don't need 12. I can get by with 3. And so how about paying people more, but we want the good deals. We want to go to Walmart and buy the good deals." And it hurts it hurts people in countries like Haiti.
I'm gonna say thank you for explaining that. So it almost sounds like too, if they don't want to fix it, because if they actually ever cured the problems in Haiti, then that would end it in their source of income.
Mhm. Right.
Sometimes people in authority know how to do just enough, but not actually fix it. But the Lord will deal with them one day because of how they're because of what's in their hearts. I want to say Salvation Army, they have a history of controversy with anti-LGBTQIA issues, just like fucking, Hobby Lobby in certain places like that. So I'm not sure about Goodwill. I haven't heard anything about them like that yet. I do know that their prices sometimes are not like as low as I would think that they should be for something like that. So I find places local that I know have like rock bottom prices. When I was homeless, I did, go to places like this to find clothes and or at least when I was trying to come back up. I think I was living back with my parents at the age of 30, when I was in rehab and starting to, go into Goodwills and stuff like that. So anyway, I just want like to make people aware of that. Do your own research into Salvation Army and stuff like that. I have I would just say I don't know, sensitivity, a sore spot towards any organization that might be against my people. But that doesn't mean everything they do is bad.
Well, I'm so glad you said that though, because there are so many things that I know I just kind of do in life and have not really investigated or just do it because that's the way I've been doing it, I think, right? But you're absolutely right. I mean, you want to be given to places that you believe in. You want to not support people that are not supporting you. And so thank you for that. I'm glad that you mentioned it because we should think about everything we do.
Yeah, have our minds in the whole lot of it. And we don't support Chick-fil-A because they are so anti-LGBTQIA plus. It is not funny. And so I'll go ahead and let you have the last word. And I'd like you to include it, a message to widows. But other than that, you can say whatever it is that you want to say.
Okay. All right. So widows, yeah, we're a people group, right? I mean, the Bible talks about the purest form of religion is to help widows and orphans in their time of need.
It does.
And I think we forget that because we think of widows as the widows back then that that whatever their husband dies, now they have no income. Well, widows here are in the same boat. Their husband dies and maybe they put their career on hold. They've whatever now their house that they live in they can no longer afford. The kids have been going to school and they can no longer afford it. Like they're people that we should be looking out for. Like, if you have somebody in your neighborhood that has lost her husband, reach out, reach out. It's not the same for men. There's widows and there's widowers, and I'm speaking to widows, to the women. I'm speaking of the women and reach out, reach out. But ladies, we need to stick in this thing together. We need to have the bond. And I would just say that one thing I learned about love, because I did this thing where I just dedicated a full year to figuring out love. Took me longer than a year actually. And one thing that I figured out is that everybody's where they're at, right? And we don't change people. Like I don't know if you've had a conversation lately where you are on one end politically and you're talking to somebody on the other end politically and they go, "Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, yeah, now I see." I mean, that doesn't happen, right?
No, it doesn't.
And yeah, so to keep things as a conversation instead of a confrontation and listen to people, listen to their words instead of, having preconceived notions of what people believe or what people think, but find out who people are. And at the same time, realize that you're only responsible for yourself. You're not going to change anybody. And so the best way to live is just to love people. Love people, let people be who they are. Don't condemn people and don't judge. I mean, there's such freedom in that to think that I'm not going to be there and there's going to be some line and I'm going to go, you're in, you're out, right? We're not judge and jury. Our only job, really, the only thing we're told to do is love each other. That's all we need to do. And it's so freeing just to do that. Let let people be who they are and just show the love. And love is what the world needs now, and love is what's gonna change the world.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love. Oh,
Along the way.
Dionne Warwick, I think.
What's that?
I think it was Dionne Warwick who sang that
Yeah,
song.
yeah, yeah. Yep. But yeah, I think so. Yeah. 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 And All You Need Is Love by the Beatles. That's a good one too.
Somebody, yeah, I'm gonna look both of those songs and include them in the show notes. That way people can have a little bit of love. Music brings us all together. So, okay.
I have some wristbands coming in. They should be in any day now that are WWLD.
What would love
Well,
do?
well, yeah, because Jesus is different to everybody, right? So people could answer that question differently. What
Right.
would Jesus do? But love is universal. So if we judged everything we did in the name of love and the things we said, if we thought to ourselves, what would love do? That is a great guide, right? So anyway, I'll send you a WWLD bracelet.
That's pretty fucking clever. I love that shit right there. Hell yeah.
Yeah,
I'll wear a WWLD, but I don't do the WWJD because of the way it's done. I just don't like the energy and the spirit behind it.
yeah,
Not everything that has the name of Jesus on it is necessarily something he would agree with.
right. Well, I've got some coming in that are rainbow.
Ooh.
I know. So yeah, you'll have to give me
Oh,
your address if I can send you some.
fuck
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so in the next episode that I'm gonna do with Kim, we're gonna get deeper into Haiti. She's gonna tell us about how she got chased by a motorcycle gang, how she slept on the ground where snakes and tarantulas roam. We're gonna get deeper into voodoo because I that really voodoo is more around us than what we think. At the end of my memoir, I have a standalone story. It's about 10 pages about about me having witchcraft performed on me. It's such an impactful story. It didn't fit into the regular storyline because it's so unreal. I wouldn't even believe it if I hadn't lived through it myself. So I want to spend some more time on voodoo. We're going to talk about overcoming government obstacles when you're trying to do good work. Your nonprofit is Rays of Hope International, and we're going to talk more about that and a bunch of other stuff. And we're going to take a deeper look into the book Love Is. We're going to talk about how love is patient, and love is kind, and love forgives, and all of those different things. So thank you so much for coming on the show today, Kim. I've had so much fucking fun with you. I feel like I've known you all my life, even
I
though
feel the same. I wish you lived next door. We could go have coffee or a glass of scotch or wine or something.
all of it except for the coffee. I might could have a drop of decaf every now and then. I have such a low tolerance to caffeine,
I don't do caffeine either. So yeah.
but I
I,
like to eat in the coffee shop. So, all right, girl, we will talk to you on the next episode.
All right, good. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for taking time to listen to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. It really means everything to me. Look, if you love the show, you can find more information and resources at sexdrugsandjesus.com or wherever you listen to your podcast. Feel free to reach out to me directly at Devannon at sexdrugsandjesus.com and on Twitter and Facebook as well. My name is Devannon, and it's been wonderful being your host today. And just remember that everything is going to be all right.